Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. Did you guys have a good week? Everybody had a good week? The rest of you didn't have a good week. I'm sorry. All right. Hey, does anybody know what a lullaby is? What is a lullaby? Yes, before bed. It's a little song that maybe somebody would sing to you to help you go to sleep. So I don't know if you can imagine this or not. Could you picture getting ready to go to bed and having Jesus sing a little lullaby to you? Can you picture that? Okay, so give it a try. So if I can do this well, this is a little song that is sort of Jesus singing to you just as you're ready to go to sleep, okay? Go to sleep, my little one. Close your eyes, my child. The day is done. I will be with you the whole night through. Sleep now, my child. I'll watch over you. Wouldn't that be nice to have Jesus right at the end, just before you're ready to go to sleep, say to you, sleep now, I'll watch over you. And that's the message I wanted you to know. God really loves you. I know things don't always go really well. There's the story we just heard was about a big storm on a sea that the disciples got into. They weren't too happy, but Jesus was with them, and Jesus is with you and I. And so maybe tonight when you go to sleep, maybe you can just picture yourself, Jesus tapping you on the head and saying, hey, I'll watch over you tonight. I'm going to be with you. Okay? Really good. It is great to see all of you today. Thanks so much for being here, okay? When Jesus says to the disciples, don't you have any faith? Are you thinking that he says to them, don't you have any faith that I can calm storms? That's sort of what you might think Jesus means, but he does not mean that, and I'm quite sure of this, because the disciples did not know that Jesus could calm a storm. They had no idea that he could do it. That's why at the end they say, who is this who can do this? Because if you read the book of Mark, to this point, it's early, it's in chapter 4, you'll realize the disciples have watched Jesus preach, they've watched him heal people, and they watched him cast out demons, but that's it. Stopping storms, that is a big cut above. Only God got to do things like that. No prophet had ever done that. They didn't know Jesus could do it. And so when Jesus says to them, don't you have any faith? He's got to be talking about something else. And it's a lesson, I think, that matters to us. Go back to the beginning of the story. Jesus says to the disciples, let's go to the other side of the lake, the Sea of Galilee, sometimes referred to a lake. Let's go to the other side. And so they do. So keep in mind now that they're in the middle of this lake, in the midst of a storm, because Jesus wants them there. They're doing what Jesus had said for them to do. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that Jesus is asleep in the back of the boat, which says to me that Jesus is not in any way concerned about the situation. He says to them, hey, let's go to the other side. He knows, like we do, that at least 4 of those disciples were fishermen. One of them may have owned the boat they were in. So these guys knew how to get to the other side of the lake. They were fishermen, sailors, and they knew all about storms that would come up real fast, these squalls that would come up on the Sea of Galilee. They'd been in hundreds of them. They were fine. Jesus is not worried in the least about this. And see, I wonder if what happens is that the disciples, they sort of panic, I guess, or maybe it is an especially violent storm, but they say to Jesus, don't you care? And again, notice they didn't say to him, hey, Jesus, wake up and calm the storm, do your thing. They just like, don't you care? And Jesus calms everything down. He says to them, don't you have any faith? I gave you everything you needed. I gave you, you got the boat, you got the talent, the skill to get us across the lake. I asked you to do something. Don't you have any faith that I would ask you to do something that you can do? Take a more modern example. Go back just a couple years. Take the pandemic. It was a big storm for us personally, perhaps, certainly for the whatever group you want to think of, the country, the nation, the world, this huge storm. And yeah, we did the right thing by praying for an end to that, because we know that Jesus can end storms like that. But I also wonder if Jesus, in the midst of the pandemic, did not want to go to us and say, don't you have any faith? You're a disciple of me. You're training to be a disciple of me. Don't you have any faith? Because you live in a fallen world. You're stuck with that. And you live in a world that has viruses and pandemics and all of this stuff. But you're a disciple. I already told you, I taught you everything you need to know to get through this storm. Love God, love your neighbor. Love God. Okay, so it was unfortunate that we could not gather for Mass. That doesn't prevent us from loving God. Love God. Keep up with your prayer life, keep up with reading the Bible, keep up with whatever devotions are meaningful to you. Do something on Sunday, watch an online Mass, spend your own hour, perhaps with your family in a time of worship. Love God and love your neighbor. Just love your neighbor. So don't run down to the Walmart and buy way more toilet paper than you need, because that's not the way to love your neighbor. That's the way to be greedy, and I taught you how to love your neighbor. And if you're one of those people that, well, I don't think masks are necessary, well, that's fine. But if you run across somebody wearing a mask is important, you're going to love your neighbor. And out of good Christian charity, you're simply going to say to them, hey, give me a second. And you'll put a mask on just for them. Love your neighbor. I just wonder if that's what Jesus wanted to say to us during the pandemic. Don't you have any faith? Don't you have any faith that I have taught you everything you need to do to get through this storm? Or take a personal example. Maybe, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. You probably know people to whom it has happened. You lie. You tell a lie. And you did not actually think it was a big deal, but it turned into a big deal. And lots of people got upset and hurt, and now there's this big storm in your relationships. And what do you and I want to do? Well, we know Jesus can calm storms, so we go to Jesus and say, oh, Jesus, would you just kind of take this whole thing away? Would you just calm this storm? And I just wonder if Jesus doesn't respond to us with, don't you have any faith? I mean, you're a disciple. You know what to do. You should have known what to do before. You should have known not to lie. But even now, you know what to do. You were wrong. Go apologize. Go ask the person for forgiveness. And if you're on the receiving end of that, you know what to do as well. Somebody asks you for forgiveness. You forgive. That's what we are taught to do. Don't we have any faith that if we do what Jesus asks, we'll get through the storm? Jesus, in teaching us to be a disciple, isn't just sort of the next guru. It's not like Jesus gave us these list of instructions and says to us, hey, go do this, you'll be fine. In other words, he didn't say to the disciples, let's go to the other side. You're prepared, you know what to do. I'll meet you on the other side. Jesus got in the boat with them, and that matters. Because a lot of what Jesus tells us to do is difficult to do, and we need as much help as we can get. And so when I was about 23, there was a big storm in my life that would be best labeled loneliness. I was really lonely, in large measure because I was trying to be a disciple. over the several months, maybe half year before that, I had decided that I was going to take discipleship seriously, and I was going to listen to the Lord, and I was going to let Jesus govern what I did in relationships, on dating, with my money. And basically what that did is it ended up distancing me from a whole lot of people that I used to be close to. And so one night, I was just in this midst of a storm of loneliness. But Jesus was in the boat with me. And he did not take that storm away. That storm subsided that night, but it continued to rage for, several years, many years actually. But that night, good Lord allowed me to feel his presence. That's where that lullaby came from. So I picked up a guitar and I was just messing around, and suddenly these words came out. So I sang just the chorus for the teens, or for the children. The rest of it goes like this. I know your hurt. I know your pain. At times the weather seems only like rain. But my plan for you has only begun, and there'll be much joy before it is done. Please trust in me. I love you so. Wait patiently. It's hard, I know. Learn my ways, my thoughts, and always do right, and I'll turn your darkness into light. Jesus is a terrific teacher. He teaches us what we need to know, what we need to get through storms, whether they're personal things, global things. He'll get us through all the storms. And the best part of all is that he'll be with us, helping us to do that. But it only works if you and I are willing to be disciples. We have to listen to the Lord. If we start listening to other people, if we start listening to ourselves and we try to do things on our own, it's not going to work out particularly well. We need to get to a point where we can say to the Lord, okay, Lord, I don't like this. I don't enjoy being in a storm. That night, I did not enjoy being in a storm of loneliness. But the Lord was with me, and he got me through that storm and so many others. And believe me, he will get you through the storms of your life.